Welcome to Artist Tales, a podcast that features and celebrates artists from different walks of life. I'm your host, Heather Martin, and in this first episode of Series 5, I'm joined by filmmaker and photographer Mal Woolford and actor-educator Charlotte Woolford, two collaborators connected by history but not by family. Their project, No Relation, is a powerful exploration of identity, ancestry, and the enduring legacy of transatlantic chattel slavery. After discovering they shared the same surname and nothing else seemingly in common, a deeper investigation revealed that Mal's ancestors were settlers and slaveholders in Barbados and British Guyana, while Charlotte may descend from those once enslaved in the Woolford household. The shared name became the starting point for an artistic partnership shaped by research, reckoning, and radical empathy. Using a 19th century photographic technique known as wet plate collodion, incorporating materials like Demerara sugar, and focusing on image making as co-creation rather than control, the work evokes absence, presence, and the invisible threads that tie us to the past. The project took them from archival sites in Guyana to a deeply symbolic exhibition at the Westminster Quaker Meeting House in London. Together we'll dive into how portraiture can challenge power, how art can bridge uncomfortable truths, and how two artists, with no relation, redefined connection through creative inquiry. Welcome, Mel and Charlotte.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
Yeah, it was really lovely. It was very sweet. Thank you.
Well, it's lovely to have you. Before we get into the project that you're working on, so I'll hand over to Charlotte. Would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I work in a school, consider myself to be an educator, and I work in a secondary school with secondary children. But at the same time, I like to consider myself open to arts, open to, if someone comes to me with an artistic view or a creative view, I open myself to that as well. So I think that's probably what I'm about right now.
Thank you, Charlotte. And how about you, Mal? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
I feel completely put on the spot. So I've been a few things. For a long time I wanted to work with moving image, and I was screenwriter. I've done screenwriting. I've been directed fiction films as well, and found my way to still photography really, and that kind of really scratches my itch in terms of really. I find it very satisfying in terms of the actual creative practice, but also around some of the philosophical underpinnings of what photography is and what it can do.
That sounds really interesting. Both of you come from very different backgrounds. So tell me a little bit more about how you discovered that you share a surname. So Mel, I'll turn to you actually if you want to tell that story.
Well, we knew each other from the school playground, so with our chips, it makes it sound like we were at school together, Char. I think our kids were at the same school together, so we'd see each other in the playground during school pick up and drop off, and we were sort of on nodding terms, weren't we?
Yeah.
And that until at one point, I went to a walk-in clinic with my neighbour. I had an elderly neighbour, so I was accompanying him. And Charlotte was there with one of her children. And that was all, still nodding terms until a nurse came out and called the surname Woolford. And I was completely thrown because I wasn't there for myself. Why would somebody be calling my name out? And Charlotte said, yes, that was her. And she went off and saw the nurse with her child. And it just sat there going, oh, okay, that's quite strange.
Yeah.
So, that was the initial part of just going, hey, there's a connection of some kind here, because Woolford's a relatively unusual name.
Yeah. And then I saw him there with the older man. I assumed that was his father. And the next day at school, even though we were all on nodding terms, like, oh, hello, I know you, I thought, I better do because it's a Catholic school as well, better do the wonderful thing where I go, oh, how was your father? So I thought better ask him how his father did. And so I said, oh, how was your father? And he said, it wasn't my father, it was my next door neighbor. And I said, oh, okay, so how was he? And he said, he's fine, but it was very strange. And I said, strange in what sense? And he said, well, they said your name and I thought it was my name. And I said, what? And he was like, yeah, because I have the same surname as you. And I was like, oh, I said, okay. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. And then I just left it at that. I didn't pursue it. But then he sort of approached me and said that he's really fascinated by our names and the fact that we, physically we look completely different, because I'm a black woman and he's a sort of a white English man. And he would be really interested to sort of figure out where our names met, so to speak, and if they did ever meet, so to speak, and that his love was photography, and he'd love to sort of do something photography based, creative wise, with our names, or the meaning of the meaning of our names, I suppose. I don't know.
And how did that make you feel, Charlotte? I mean, it sounds, kind of I don't know, it's not kind of an obvious avenue to explore kind of how you share a surname.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I just thought, I'm curious, but I'm not that curious, actually. But I suppose his enthusiasm led me to go, actually, okay, yeah, sure, I'll give this a go. It's creative, so I'm quite open to that. So yeah, I'll give this a go. I was mildly curious, but I wasn't as curious as him. He was very curious.
So what drove the curiosity, Mal? I mean, both the curiosity and thinking, let's explore this in a photographic project.
Well, I'd always been aware of people with the Woolford surname with a Caribbean origin. I remember my grandparents seeing somebody who was a school teacher being interviewed, and the strap at the bottom of the screen identifying the person, and they talked about it for about a week, about how could that be? How on earth could that be? It's the most English name. So that was a young child then. That kind of stuck with me. And I think, why did it really stick out? I just like to worry away at these things, or just pick away and go, it can't just not mean anything. It's probably quite inconvenient, but it's interesting, and so I really want to dig in. It helps really that Charlotte is so open to, particularly at the beginning, because it was a really kind of clumsy approach, just so willing to give it a go. But what happened quite quickly, I got put in touch with somebody who's a genealogist, this guy called Bill Pinfold. He within a matter of a week, he'd identified a lot of source material that was incredibly helpful in terms of narrowing it down. And it narrows down really, really quickly because the name is an unusual one.
Yeah.
And why explore this photographically? So you've done the genealogy, and, Woolford is not a common name. So why do a photographic kind of exploration of that history?
I think it's a challenging medium in terms of how do you photograph that? And so that's something I really like, that challenging aspect of how do you take something. Photography is really great. You can be very, very straight and direct in terms of this is a photographic representation of a thing, but it also has the capacity to be metaphorical with it. You can make references and jumps. You can make references to other artworks. It's an incredibly versatile medium. But the great thing that it really has is that it exists in time. So you think about photography being a way of freezing something in time, but actually that photograph that you've made is also existing in time as well. And so the whole idea of this is a connection which has happened historically back in time, using photography as a means of talking in terms of time. So that's how I kind of regard it.
And Charlotte, do you have much experience with photography at all before this project?
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. I don't even like taking photographs on my camera. So that was quite an eye-opener. And now through Mal, I have this wonderful love of analog photography. Got myself a little sort of Holga camera as well, and take photographs on the side, and it's all analog, and it's just I really like it. It fills me in a really creative way. I really do like it, and I respect all analog photographers.
And I'm just thinking about the history between your families. I've mentioned the transatlantic chattel slavery. And Mal, your family history has, we're slave owners pretty much. So it's a question to both of you in terms of how did that sit with you when you started digging and you started researching the kind of family histories you both have and the kind of entwined history, which is quite frankly really challenging?
Yeah. It felt inevitable.
Do you want to go first, Charlotte?
I think it felt inevitable when we started the journey. It felt like this will be the conclusion. It's just a matter of if our families met, where did they meet? But this is kind of almost a foregone conclusion, isn't it? I mean, we're sort of shutting the door and the horse is already gone. That's how it felt to me. Like, we're just going to dig until we do find it. We will find it. And I think we did that. The journey of us going through it was what made myself and Mal's relationship better. Our relationship got closer, and through that closeness, we produced some of our most, fantastic work in wet plate photography. But it's definitely been the journey, trying to seek back and see where that journey sort of started, that the journey that it's taken us on. That's been the journey of itself, and the creative journey. And no matter how much we feel that sometimes our photography has gotten different, or it looks different, or it feels different, it still goes back to that question of our family and our heritage, and where our names met, back in Guyana, I suppose, back in, the 1800s in Guyana, in times of slavery.
And how about you, Mal?
It's sat slightly differently for me. Well, not differently. I mean, what Charlotte was describing, I think, for me, is also true in that it was great having the physical act of photographing as a way of looking at images and saying, oh, I see something deeper, I see something older. There's things that seem sometimes like ancestral. Because we shoot with very long exposures, your faces become kind of archetypal. I don't know the best word to use. It becomes not Charlotte's face or my face, but something more essential or older. And so you get these little bits of feedback from the way you're photographing and looking, reviewing, and going, this is showing me something that we want to, either we want to repeat or don't want to repeat. So, but in terms of emotionally, it was for a long time I found it very, very heavy going. I was doing lots of reading and I went to the National Archives in Kew, and I was going through slave registers, and that's a really heavy thing to do, because there's a lot of investment in historically in our families of being passed down, of omitting this knowledge or downplaying it. And while the Woolfords weren't, so the Woolfords that were in Guyana are kind of essentially cousins. So it's my 6 times great uncle who went out, and his family that was founded from Barbados and then to Guyana. But the connection is, and they weren't large plantation owners. And so what it brings home is just how ubiquitous, or how common it was for people to have connections to enslavement, and how ordinary it was. And coming full circle to an ordinary situation in London, where Charlotte and I are standing next to each other in a playground, not having any awareness for years that we had there's this connection that we have.
Yeah, it's very, very strange and very surreal when you think about it.
And it just shows the continuing impact of the slave trade. And a lot of it we don't know because we don't talk about it, and a lot of that history, there is that history, but there's also erasure. And I'd imagine the boats with the slaves on it, I would imagine there are no names, and they take the name of the slave owners. So you just completely erase kind of somebody's history.
Yeah. It's essentially what happened to everyone who was of a colour, I suppose, at that time. It was whatever your name wasn't irrelevant. It was, you're named after us now, thank you. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Just to pick up on the language. Currently, we tend to refer to people as being enslaved and enslavers. So rather than owners or holders. So we kind of want to get rid of that whole legalistic thing, the idea of ownership being normalized, if you like.
It's a very good point, because I think that language is still, people use it, but it's a really good point around enslavers and enslavees. It gives a different perspective, and you don't own people. I'm just interested in kind of why you've chosen wet plate photography, because I have seen the images, or a number of your images, and they are very haunting. And I think that type of technology does lend itself to the type of things you're doing. But I'd like to hear from both of you, why were you kind of drawn to that particular type of photography? Because is it mainstream? I mean, even analog is becoming, there's a bit of a subculture of it, but it's not the norm. It's, people have gone digital. Whereas wet plate photography is even more subculture, if you see what I mean.
For me personally, myself and Mal met up. It was COVID time, just at the end of COVID. And he said he wanted to start the project again with me. And I said, okay. And he said, but I don't know what direction to take it in. I knew he had recently did a wet plate photography course, and he showed me the sort of the image that he got of himself when he did the course. And I said, oh, this is it. We have to go in this direction. He looked amazing in this photograph. And I remember saying, we should definitely go for this. And there was something about it when we first started doing it. I mean, gosh, kudos to Mal. Chemicals and everything it does is a headache, and it cost a lot of money. But but the results were just amazing, and it seemed to marry everything that we were talking about, everything that we were doing before in the past. Suddenly, this creative aspect suddenly just pushed us right into where we wanted to be. And I know you say that there were some pictures that are very haunting, but it's that thing of like, I don't know, it's like going right back to the beginning. Like, this was the first medium of sort of photography, and it just seemed correct by our creative standards to start right at the beginning. And that's where we still are, right at the beginning.
We had the kind of idea of because the point at which the compensation was being paid to enslavers in around 1834 was just at that point where photography is just emerging as a medium. And so it felt right to go back to, we had the idea of, what if we were working with technology which was available to those people, but it was in the hands of people who wanted to be in right relationship, in equality with each other? How would that be? Because the wet plate, as it was used, it was in the hands of people who were like Julia Margaret Cameron, who had plantations in Sri Lanka, who photographed their servants. So there's always a kind of a power-based or a class-based component within wet plate. Not entirely, because there were practitioners who would go around and take photographs of people for small amounts of money. It did become democratized, but for large images of the start, the sort that we were doing, it was a very exclusive thing to do. So what then became was that we, the physical aspect of making the plates meant that Charlotte could be completely involved, rather than initially we were working on film and I was processing it and I was very much taking her photograph and she would sit for me, and it felt, again, clumsy. Once we got into working with wet plate, we could completely co-photograph together. Do you remember that first time that you said, give it to me?
No.
So I think I was about to pour like the third or fourth plate that we'd done together, and Charlotte, you just said, I'll do that. And that's the point at which you went, okay, great, this is what it's what I was hoping for, that we'd find a way of working together that was the two of us making images together. And we don't keep track of who develops the image, who
Yeah.
pours the plate. It's very much this image is made by both of us, to the point where we don't individually own the pictures. You're currently looking after them at the moment, Char, I think, most of them.
Yes. Mal had an extension, so I had to take all the frames sort of boxed up. But his studio is in effect now. So, but yeah, no, we work quite harmonious together somewhat. You know, he'll set it up and I'll then come in and do some bits and pieces, and we share sort of 50-50 of it. Sort of. So it's we work quite well together. Yeah. Or at least I think we do. I'm not sure.
I think you're underselling it. I think we work very well together.
As someone who's had my portrait taken, I think you're amazing. You work amazingly well together.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah. No, we had great fun with you the day you came over. It was really lovely.
Oh, I had great fun as well, and I'd certainly do it again. I plan to do it again. One thing I've been there's been a couple of things I've been reflecting on. You know, there's certainly using the wet plate technology. There's something kind of historic or something timeless about it, but there also, the images you take are very contemporary. And there's that kind of, you know, and yes, there's, you know, I can see the hauntingness in them, and particularly the subject matter. But I'm just thinking and just reflecting what I'm seeing in them, and is you kind of dealing with subject matter that is 200-300, if not longer, years old, you know, goes back generations, you know, and we're still seeing the effects of, even if it's not blatant. But it's that kind of using, as you say, using technology of the time, but in a very different way. So it's, you know, trying to rebalance the power dynamics, or making it much more collaborative. But I'm just thinking too, it's that kind of tension between the contemporary and history and what has happened. And I'm just wondering if that was something you were conscious of, or is just kind of there.
I think we've become more conscious of it when we definitely did the our little sort of capsule collection, and we had it up at the Quaker Centre, and how people viewed it, how people who would hear our story would then look at it and go, oh, everything is related. You know, I think we thought we were sort of doing something quite modern and something quite contemporary, and everyone just goes, no, this is the past, you know. So it's just, it's a juxtaposition. It's weird, you know. And even when you think you've traveled far from it, you know, we were inspired. I think one of the last shots of the collection, we were inspired by modern sort of contemporary stuff. We were very overwhelmed from Guyana, and we just wanted to take some fun shots. And that happened to be one of the last ones we put in our capsule collection. And everyone was like, oh, this is the one, this is the slavery one, you know. And you were just going, not really, no. but yeah, so it's really weird. Like you do it, but because of the subject matter and how we met, it's very hard for people to pull away from it or to see something else.
I think, well, I'd approach it slightly differently, and that's that if you think about that household in Guyana, you have people in very close proximity to each other, but they still have that status relationship between them. But they were effectively living in one property together, the enslaved and the enslavers. And I always, part of the original thought was, how could they do that? How could they maintain that relationship when you're living in quite close, intimate circumstances? And I think one of the things that the wet plate does, particularly the way that we're doing portraiture together, is that you're really looking, the camera is close, the faces are close to full, you know, real size, and you can really, it's kind of careful looking portraiture. And I think that's partly what makes it look so contemporary, because it's that's immediate. But then again, it's through the lens, you know, it's through an old lens, and it's through an old technique, which kind of, it gives you a kind of shimmering, vibrating sense of past and present kind of colliding with each other, or interacting.
That's really interesting, because I can now see that from that point of view as well, because certainly when I've shown the pictures of me, the portraits of me, people are like, that looks very 19th century. And it's, although I'm wearing very contemporary clothes with contemporary hairstyle, it still has that, that looks like it could be 2 centuries ago, you know? So yeah, no, it's that kind of, I like that play between contemporary and historic. And I think due to the subject matter you're dealing with, that can be really quite powerful as well. Now, one thing I did mention in the introduction is wet plate photography can incorporate materials like Demerara sugar. And now sugar for me is that was a plantation crop. So was that another factor, or is that something that you'd considered when choosing this type of medium to take photographs with?
Certainly for me, in terms of trying to bed the process into something which would relate it to Guyana. So very much before we went there, I was looking for any way to feel connected to the subject, and the fact that there's a developer recipe which involves sugar. Just decided to change the sugar type and do that because it was a way to connect. Now that we've been there, I think it's I kind of feel that, and we've shown the work there. I feel that we've made that connection, and so that becomes less important because it's kind of the whole project feels grounded now.
Yeah. Mal was very excited about using Demerara sugar, and anything that would sort of pull us back to Guyana. And also there was also the frames. He was getting someone to build a couple of frames for us to hold the wet plates because glass is quite heavy. And we got this. He said, "Oh, there's this tree called Purple Heart," and the guy said it's from the man who was making the frame said it's. Here are the Guyanese woods, and Mal chose Purple Heart. And we just assumed that it would be... I just assumed it was a wood that was called Purple Heart. I had no idea it was literally neon purple in colour. It was absolutely gorgeous. And, of course, our frames stood out in the gallery amongst all the other sort of plain black frames.
And so it was really, really lovely. Charlotte? Is that something you're interested in, or is it kind of secondary to what you're doing with the project?
To me, yeah, but the thing is, I when someone is so enthusiastic about something, it's so you easily get just pulled in with it. You it's like a cyclone. You get sucked in with it, and you go, yeah. You sort of turn into a puppy. You're like, yes, that's amazing. Yes, let's do it. And Mal is so enthusiastic about certain things to deal with the photography and to deal with the wet plates that you do get pulled in. So yeah, no, it became important to me as well, which was really nice because it's something that I've almost been separated from because I was born here and I was raised here, and my mum talks of Guyana sometimes, but the siblings that I was raised with, my mum had 8 of us, and the siblings, she had 4 of them that were born in Guyana and 4 of us that were born here. And of course I was raised with the 4 that were born here, my older sister, myself, and my 2 younger brothers. So we never really had much sort of cultural wise to sort of affiliate with Guyana. I knew my mom was from Guyana, and there were certain foods that came from
Charlotte,
Guyana.
You mentioned some of the feedback you've gotten, or you both have gotten, about the project at Westminster Quaker Meeting House. I mean, I know you've had that big exhibition there, or that exhibition there, or actually, I call it big. It's quite a profound exhibition, to be fair. That's probably a better word for it. What other feedback, or because I'm curious about how people engage with that exhibition, because it's not an easy subject matter.
No, it's not an easy subject matter, and it was. I don't know if I didn't. I don't know if I knew that it wasn't easy when it was up there. It was very, very bizarre. I sort of like. It sort of came in like, oh, this is actually quite difficult almost, especially because my input is this is how we met, this is what we've done, and this is what we're doing. But people's reactions to it were very intense and quite heavy. The best session we had was at the end. We had a closing session with everybody, and we invited lots of people. And that was really good because they all came at the same time. So it wasn't like I was sort of leading one group around of people and then Mal was leading another group and then I'd go to the next group and sort of walk them, talk them through it. And that was really good. And it was all organic and all the questions were there and we answered it. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of that thing of like, I just like the process. I like taking photos. And then people were like, this is really heavy. It was like, oh, I suppose it is, and looking at, the house that, that was the last known location that,
and how about you, Mel?
the enslavers and the
did you get
enslaved were
other
at.
comments,
it was
or
like,
how did you
wow,
experience that feedback?
It was quite heavy.
I think the most striking thing for me was how people were able to, it enabled people to talk about something they didn't feel they could normally talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that's the great thing about something that is creative. People, it takes away positions and people can just respond to the work. I mean, and some people just read what they wanted to read into it. It was hard to tell. Are they projecting into it or is it there? It's there to be seen. I think for us, it was a real test to see if the work stood up. And we printed the images quite large, and it really did. So, and it was hard to tell initially whether that would happen. But again, it was Charlotte saying, now we need to have an exhibition. And I think that's been one of the great benefits of us partnering together, has been Charlotte going, I feel it's time we need to do this. And she's always right.
But you remember right at the end, I said, no, it's not the right time. And you were like, well, we're already here. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get cold feet after you said it's time to do it. It's happening.
So final question is, what's next? I know Greenbelt is in a couple of weeks. We're in August 2025. And I know the exhibition, you're going to show it there. You're also going to show it later in the year in Southampton. So it sounds like you have some plans and you've gotten some coverage in some of the Quaker publications and I imagine elsewhere as well, and this podcast. So what are your plans, in terms of what's next? I mean, there's a few things in the bag, but what else would you like to do with it?
I think absolutely. It's the next phase is a book. And I think I'd like to, Charlotte and I, we haven't discussed this yet. I'm thinking about showing it in smaller spaces, actually. I want to find a way of getting the actual plates shown in a really, really beautiful way. So that's for me. And the book is a book. It would be great just because it allows a kind of intimate way of looking at the work in a quiet way. So I'm excited about both of those.
Yeah, definitely a book. We've spoken about a book many, many times, and we really need to sort of get on that and have a book and do a book launch and all those wonderful things that happen with a book launch. So yeah, going to go out there and say that. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. We're going to have to do it then.
Yeah, I have to.
Definitely. And I'm going to be one of the first to buy it.
Thank you so much.
Well, great. It's been lovely speaking with you. It's been so fascinating to talk about your project and where you see it taking you. So I'd like to thank you both for being guests on this podcast.
Thank you, Heather. We love the show and looking forward to hearing the next season.
Yes.
And all the exciting people you got.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning into my conversation with Mal and Charlotte. I hope you found their project, No Relation, as moving and thought-provoking as I did. Their work reminds us how art can uncover hidden histories, challenge inherited narratives, and spark meaningful dialogue. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out Mal's and Charlotte's social media handles in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with friends, leave a review, or help spread the word. In the next episode, I'll be speaking with Jacqueline Suari, whose astonishing drawings, crafted with ballpoint pen and mixed media, explore emotion, identity, and the beauty of detail. You won't want to miss it.